So welcome to our podcast today with CareStack and Alisha Gerrard from Wasatch Dental Association. Today, we're going to feature our discussion along the following lines. Help. I'm suffering from dental subscription software overload. So without further ado, I want to introduce Alisha Gerrard. Alisha, if you could kind of just give the audience a little bit of your background, your role in the practice at Dr. Lawrence Palmer in Ogden, Utah, that'd be great. A great place to start if you're okay with that.
Yeah, of course. I've been in dental for 10 years now. I started as a dental assistant and worked my way up to front desk. And now I'm office manager. I've been office manager for 4 years. I started working at Dr. Palmer's office 5 years ago, and it has really shaped my entire outlook on career with life, being able to have this opportunity. Company as well, a local one. So having the two backgrounds really is nice to be able to tie between the two.
That definitely is unique, certainly the people I talk to. So when you talk about that experience in both healthcare and dentistry, could you share a little bit more about that experience and how it might relate to our audience here? That'd be really helpful.
Yeah. So healthcare has always been evolving. There's always new laws and regulations. It's constantly changing. It's always on a fast track. You always have to keep up so you can stay on top of your game. Dental has in the past been a little bit more stagnant. So there hasn't been the need to, kind of change as fast as you do with healthcare. But recently it has changed dramatically, and especially with the COVID pandemic, it really, really changed the game plan of, what we're doing with dentistry. Adapting is really hard. And if you don't have a software that can adapt with these changes, then you're kind of stuck. And if we had to stay with our previous company, there's no way we would have made it through the shutdown with COVID. I mean, our office was shut down for 7 weeks. And just the basic things like being able to work from home, log in, communicate effectively to your patients, I would not have been able to do that with the previous softwares. So that is a huge, huge thing with adaption.
It's funny you mentioned that dentistry kind of lags behind. There's an old joke that you walk into a dental practice and it's kind of like you walk 5 years back in history. And I hear that a lot from practices that we work with. So from your perspective in Ogden, Utah, in your office, and someone who's using technology in a day-to-day capacity, what kind of role does it play in your world, in your life?
So technology really takes a lot off my plate. Things like texting, auto confirmations, text to pay, the patients having their own portals, having digital patient forms, statements are easy with a click of a button, claim submission and attaching forms is super easy. All of that could essentially be a full-time employee's role. And so by able to have all of those on autopilot, basically, you can cut out having, to have to pay an employee just to do those simple tasks. For an example, with patient forms, traditionally before CareStack, we would print our forms and give it to the patient. They would sign it, and then we would scan it and shred it. And that's just a huge waste in not only resources, but in time. Scanning was always such a big job of the second front office person. And now it's very minuscule because, it takes me 5 minutes to load all of the patient forms needed for the next day. And then when they come in and check in on the tablet, it's just ready to go. It's automatically in their doc center. I mean, it's just a huge, huge time saver.
Yeah, thank you for speaking to that. I'm just curious, how have the patient expectations changed in our new world in terms of the technology and how you employ it? And I say new world, do me a favor. If I say new normal, will you make me put money into a jar and I'll send it to you in Utah?
I know. I say it all the time too. It is the new normal. There's always that push from a few patients who they just want a paper form. They don't want to confront technology. But ever since COVID happened, I've noticed that push is a lot less because people expect to, be able to do things from their home, be able to do things from their phone. And I explain to people, this is cutting down tons of time, tons of resources. Now we can go green because we're not shredding and scanning, printing, and I've actually noticed, I've been pretty pleasantly surprised, the older population, they're actually pretty on it. They know how to use a tablet. A lot of them have smartphones and tablets. You can't really buy a phone anymore that's not a smartphone. So we really have very few patients that don't love using all of the technology, and everyone uses it, you know, as much or as little as they want, which is great. Some people have the patient portal, some people don't, that's fine. Some people, I'll send them a text to pay link and they'll immediately call me and pay over the phone instead of using the link. You know, having all of those options is great because that younger generation, they want them all. They want to be, have the easiest access to do something. And then, you know, it's there in terms of saving time and even transmission between the front and the back. I don't want somebody signing something in the back operatory where there's germs and then bringing that paper up front. So now that's cut out. Yeah.
But it sounds like you're meeting them on their journey, right? Like you mentioned, some people can adapt to it and use it to a greater extent than others.
Yeah.
You know, that's a good insight. I'm just curious. I want to share my screen with you just for a moment. You might have not seen this from CareStack, but we've kind of, you know, our philosophy here has been, you know, to put people at ease with this technology, right? And this is some of the things you already you touched upon. No need to scan, paying by texts. Patients want to book appointments online. So I just wanted to illustrate for our listeners and our viewers that this capability is wherever you want to meet that patient on that journey. I think that's important to talk about.
Exactly. Yes.
So talking about, if we can shift gears here for a moment, talking about technology modernization. Can you walk through our listeners and viewers about why you decided to move away from like a legacy landscape, an on-premise solution? In your case, it happened to be Dentrix, but in others, it might be EagleSoft or Open Dental, you know, with bolt-ons, and move to kind of like a solution like CareStack that's an all-in-one. Like what that process was like, and just, you know, when you guys made a decision, like what was that decision-making process like internally for you and the office team?
Yeah, so previously we had Dentrix and we had Weave and Podium and a whole slew of other programs, and they would all connect together by linking and pulling data from each other, and it was super irritating. One update would happen with one program and it would throw the connection off for all of them. And then we're paying for all of these different softwares. And I'm just thinking there's got to be a better way, and Dentrix is never going to get there. I'm sorry. All of these other companies are great, but they do all of the stuff you want, but not the EMR solution. And then some of the softwares would come out with a new feature that was the duplication of services of what you're already paying for in one of your other subscriptions, but you can't cancel your other subscription because it does stuff that all of the others don't.
Okay.
So it was just constantly this battle of fighting between computer issues, problem solving, and just double paying for things that didn't need to happen. And I would contact my IT guy constantly because whenever an issue would happen, I never knew, was it Dentrix? Was it Weave? Was it my computer itself? Is it the internet? Trying to drill down that problem was a huge, huge time waster. And it's amazing, ever since we went over to CareStack, I think I don't even know if I've called my IT guy one time since we've done this, because I know that if I have an issue, it's the internet, it's my computer, or it's CareStack itself. That is it. I don't have to do all this problem solving. So, and if I ever have any issues, it's just so nice to chat with support. They're so quick. I never wait more than 30 seconds for somebody, you know, to be on the other end to help. And if they can't solve a problem that instant, then I usually get an email update either that day or the next day. So it's really just saving time and saving money. I mean, we went from paying for all those 6 programs and all of that money put together compared to what we're paying now, huge money saver.
I'm sure that keeps Dr. Palmer happy too, right? At the end of the day.
Yes, of course, yes.
So I'm just curious, aside from the cost savings, which you mentioned, what are some just efficiencies for the operational side of the business in your world has it accomplished both clinically and for the office team?
Yeah, so the biggest thing that I've noticed is we're saving time. And of course, time does mean money. You know, I'm not having to pay a whole staff member to do all of these little things. Of course, before I also had all of these little things that can be done automatically, but it was with all of the separate programs and all that duplication. But yeah, like I said before, my number one time spent was on problem solving. And when I had an issue, I had to call and be on hold with support for an hour or longer with one of the several other software companies, and dealing with, you know, some of the service techs that aren't so bright. So my focus has really changed from problem solving to being proactive and being able to focus on the practice and being able to focus on growth. And another thing that's been really big is I just recently went through a staff change with one of my front office people, and the training period is completely different than it was with Dentrix, because with Dentrix, there's no videos, there's no quizzes, there's no help and support there. It's just kind of a watch and learn process. But with CareStack, I was able to sign them up for the online university, send them all the quizzes I want them to do, all the information and videos they needed to learn. And I'm also not training them on 6 different softwares. I'm training them on CareStack and CareStack only.
Well
so
put.
that was a huge difference. I have gotten her up to speed so much faster than I've ever gotten any other team member up to speed. And then with all of the other softwares, I always had to do kind of a daily check on them, make sure that things are running smoothly with each of them. And that's usually where I'd find all the problems. But with CareStack, it's just one easy daily check. You know, I check my online appointment requests, I check my auto pays. It's all in one system. Everything's, you know, someone does an auto pay, it's already in their ledger, it's already attached to their balance. I'm not having to import anything and just waste all of this time that really is completely unnecessary.
Yeah, well put. Thank you for speaking to that. And, you know, reality for a lot of offices as they've reopened, there's been staffing fluctuations, right? So you mentioned just a genuine reality of having new people come into the practice, and the necessity to get them onboarded quickly in an expedient manner.
Exactly.
Yeah, so it's no secret to our listeners and viewers that you're a CareStack client. You've been on board now for 8 months, which is amazing how time flies, right?
Yeah.
But I think it's important to mention that CareStack is relatively unknown in the landscape, right? We're not distributed by Shine or Patterson. We don't have this massive, you know, social media presence. So walk me through a little bit your decision-making process to select CareStack when there's probably safer bets that are out there that are more well-known, you know, with all candor, if you're okay to speak to that.
Of course. So I'm not one to make a decision lightly, especially a decision this big. I mean, changing your EMR is a really big deal because it changes the entire landscape of everything and every position and how things are done. During the initial phase of researching CareStack, I went through every single training video so I could see exactly how things were done. And I wanted to make sure that this change, you know, if we did it, it wasn't going to be impossible. I wanted to make sure it did everything that I wanted to do too. So I spent a lot of hours on that to make sure that it really did replace all of my other programs. I, you know, compared costs too. That was a huge thing. All of these other programs compared to just one bundle of CareStack was a big difference. And then of course, you know, calculating all of the time and the money that you're going to save. So I searched out 3 other companies as well that were similar to CareStack, but all of them could do almost everything that CareStack could do except one major component. So I would have had to keep either Podium or Weave or my claims processing submission. And I didn't want to do that. The whole point was just consolidate and get rid of everything. So yes, some of those other companies might have been safer because they have been around for a long time. But one thing that I really grasped from them is they're not really changing and adapting and updating like I wanted it to. And that's one thing that really impressed me about CareStack. The thing that probably made the final decision was I talked to a client who's been on CareStack for a number of months, and he told me all the pros, all the cons, and he really dived into how CareStack fixes problems and their response team of the support. And that's what I was really looking for. I wanted a non-biased review. I wanted to know exactly what we were getting into. And it just made sense, because even though those other companies could have been safer, I knew I would have been frustrated in the long run because they wouldn't have adapted like I wanted them to. But I know CareStack is fully capable of adapting, and I've seen it over the past 8 months. Things are always changing for the better. They're always gathering insight and input from clients, and I always constantly send in enhancement requests and suggestions, and I've gotten several of them become accepted, which is awesome. So that was the number one thing, is just the lack of conforming and growth from those other companies that were safer. CareStack, I know that they have huge growth, and they've already shown it. So especially since COVID happened, there's no way we would have been able to run as smoothly that we did during the shutdown and quarantine had we not had CareStack. So I'm really glad that we got CareStack in time for that.
Yeah, thank you for speaking to those points. And for our listeners out there, I mean, we're not perfect as a company. And I think Alisha mentioned that. Technology is always evolving. And so we've got to be responsive to suggestions from the people that are using it day in, day out. Like, how can we make this better? Because it's not it's a fluid situation we're in, right? So a great example is the ability now to do parking lot or curbside check-in. That came from enhancement request, Alisha, where our clients wanted to use the parking lot as the check-in vehicle. So thank you for speaking to that. The other big elephant that I want to address is change management, right? So you're very technology, you're a technology philic, right? You're drawn to making things easier and better. Not everyone feels that way. They're more phobic towards technology. And in the case of maybe Dentrix, there's a lot of muscle memory, right? That's built from using Dentrix. And so now you go back to Dr. Palmer and the clinical team, what's that like for them to unlearn and learn a new product, in essence? I mean, the commands are different, let's face it. So if you could walk through that, I'm really curious about that.
Yeah. So that was my biggest fear, was rejection of having to learn a new system, because, on our team, we have some people that are awesome with technology, and then we have others that aren't. And you're going to have that in any dental practice. But from the very, very beginning of just watching the videos, I remained super positive about the change. I talked about it with excitement. I was constantly telling them, oh, look at all these new things it can help us do. Look at all this time it can help us save. Look how much easier your job is going to be. Look how much easier my job is going to be. And so that was how I approached it from the very beginning. And then being able to, once we actually signed the contract and started the whole onboarding process, having everybody be able to go through the training videos that fit their role was a huge, huge thing. So then they didn't feel completely blindsided, because nobody wants to feel dumb when they have to do something new. And so that was a nice big leg up for them. And the absolute complete game changer was the 2-day on-site training. No other company did that. Those other 3 companies I looked at, none of them did that. I don't know if Dentrix even does that. It's been around for so long. They just kind of expect everybody to know it. But that was huge, because they already were familiar with the system. But then when it came time to actually go live, there was a specialist there in our office, 2 full days, 8-9 hours a day, just making sure everybody knew exactly what to do. And honestly, there are a lot of similarities between Dentrix and CareStack. So it wasn't a complete flip to everybody. Gotcha. And I would always approach things like, this is how you do this, and it's exactly like doing this in Dentrix. So that was my biggest push from the very beginning, was making sure everyone was excited and comfortable and prepared, because I didn't want that rejection, because that makes it really, really hard when you're trying to change something as big as this was. So it was actually a really good experience. The onboarding process was several weeks, and I worked with Danae on the back end. And so we could get the whole system all set up and ready to go. And then when Marie came in and did that training, that that was just icing on the cake.
Yeah, thank you for speaking to that. I mean, we try to embrace the fact that you said this is a big change for dental practice, and you have the chops to do it. Not every practice wants to make this change, and we're not trying to scare people away, but you need to embrace the fact that it's a big decision to make. It's a big move.
Exactly. But
And
it
so,
was a needed decision.
sure, sure. This kind of falls into a similar vein. Let's talk a little bit more about implementation, because your practice was in full swing. You implemented back in January, and you guys were in full swing seeing patients, traditional appointment volumes. So what was that like a little bit? And maybe you can just give a little granularity to how that worked out for you.
Yeah. It was a lot smoother than I expected to be. Like I said, with the whole onboarding process, the training videos, and the 2-day training. The first day that we had the trainer Marie come in and do our first on-site live training, we didn't have any patients that day. So,
Okay.
Which was a day that we normally don't work anyways. That was able to kind of ease everybody into it, make sure everything was set up properly so that when we did see patients, we hit the ground running. It was like there was no disruption. So day 2 was total live patients. We had an entire full schedule, and it was very smooth. I was very shocked. The hard work that we put on during that onboarding process really definitely paid off. The training videos and all of that. So I don't know. It just goes to show that CareStack really does want you to succeed. And it shows that they really do care, because I feel like other companies will just sell you the software that can do all these amazing things, but they might not as in-depthly show you how to do that, which really bought us over even more, when we were into it. So there's just no way that any of this would have been as smooth as possible had it not been for those 3 key things: the onboarding process,
Sure.
and the on-site training, and the training videos with CareStack University.
So let's fast forward now. We're here in August, almost September. It's unbelievable, right? Almost 8 months in with CareStack. What kind of benefits are you realizing for the business?
I knew that we would save time, but I didn't realize how much time we would save, with all of this. Like I said, I used to regularly reach out to my IT guy, maybe once a month, sometimes twice a month. And I have not reached out to him ever since we implemented CareStack. Not one time.
Wow.
So huge headache, completely gone there. Having to pay him to come all the way up here. He doesn't live close. So, and I've also been able to really focus on practice growth. I love focusing on practice growth. And what I would do before with Dentrix is they have millions of reports, and you would download them, and they wouldn't be exactly what you wanted. So then I would download them into an Excel spreadsheet, and then I'd order things and switch things and color code things, and just to make sure that I wasn't missing things, that things weren't falling through the cracks. With Dentrix, I feel like it's pretty notorious for things to fall through the cracks if you're not on top of it, but you can't just pull a report to be on top of it. You got to dig.
Right.
And now the way that CareStack does the reporting and the tracking and the aging of things, it's just, I'm not focusing on putting out fires anymore. I mean, I'm just focusing on making sure we're staying on top of things. So I'm a huge nerd, and I love, reports and analytics and meeting targets and goals, and it's fairly easy to see now, and it's fairly easy to do. So I'm spending a lot less time on just the daily grunge of things, and I'm spending a lot more time on just, customer service and creating our office culture and making sure that things aren't falling through the cracks. I mean, that's what an office manager should ideally be doing. They shouldn't be doing things like confirming appointments and making sure insurance estimates are correct. I don't have to make sure insurance estimates are correct. I know they're correct because the CareStack insurance factor is so much more accurate than it was in Dentrix. So, just things like that. It's easy to track payments. One of my favorite things that I've really grown to love is payments within CareStack. They have this idea where there's the insurance bucket and there's the patient bucket, and they're completely separate. Dentrix was not like that. It was one big lump sum, and you thought insurance would pay this much of it and patient would pay this much. And if you were off, it was just all over the place. Simple things like putting in insurance adjustments. With Dentrix, you had to manually calculate. You always had your calculator out, adding everything together on a claim when your insurance estimate was off. And with CareStack, I mean, it's code by code, line by line. It's so much easier. So just the hassle of those little tiny things and the possibility for errors, completely gone.
Yeah, thank you for speaking to that. You know, kind of my last question, and you've been so generous with your time. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So many good pearls for our listeners here. We know that, you mentioned enhancement requests, but this is, I want to hear, and the viewers want to hear about your wish list. Like what are the areas you'd like to see enhanced or improved or built upon in the future as we continue to update this platform, this technology here at CareStack?
Yeah. So because I'm a nerd and I love reports, I'm super excited for the analytics portion to be fully functional. I know they've been working really hard on it. I've already seen drastic improvements, since we started with CareStack. But it's really just the little things. I want like a website chat function because that's the only thing that I'm missing from my other 6 subscriptions.
Okay.
Just different ways to view reports, which I know they're constantly, conforming for that. Something simple like being able to drag and drop a block rather than have to cut it and paste it, and they've already made it so you can actually extend and, increase the time and stuff. So it's just those little things. And if I think about it, I can jump on my computer, quickly just send the supporter request, just say, hey, here's an enhancement request. This is something
Sure.
I'd like to see. And they're like, great, we have it. We'll let you know what the updates are on it. So it's just the little things, really. But if I could get to something really big, and I know this would be really extensive, but if we could turn the patient portal and where the check-in process is into an app on people's phones, and if they had their location services turned on, then if they're within so many feet of our building, bam, on their phone pops up, click the button to check in and fill out all your forms and end of story. Because sometimes, you do get a little bit of traffic at the tablet when people are checking in and signing forms, but that would be a really cool feature. I know it would be a really big project because it's not only app development, but it's
Right.
patient settings on their phones and stuff like that. But yeah, that would be like my big thing right now that I would love to see.
Well, thank you for speaking to that. This is the place to do it. You're going to have the audience of all the right people. So
Exactly.
on behalf of CareStack, Alisha, I just want to thank you for taking the time to speak with us today, for your candor. It's super valuable to hear from someone who's got the experience in both healthcare and dentistry to make that kind of comparison. But obviously, your scope of expertise is wide and just vast. And so we really appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
You got it.